we've done a lot, again, in the last, I guess we're closer to 6.5 days now, not 6 1/3 days. But I just wanted to bring those ideas back to the front of your mind before we jump into the rest of the work for today. So, our process for the rest of the day. We're going to experience one more snippet of a unit of instruction through tasks. Eventually, we're going to land with more of a planning thing, but I think it's helpful to have the full view of what we've talked about fresh on our minds as you go into that planning. So we're going to do 3 more tasks together that are like student-facing work. So these are things that if you teach 5th grade, steal it, use it. Like they're ready to go. They're not full units. They're just small tasks that would need to be surrounded by lots of other things, but they're ready to go for what they are. Then we're going to look at the template that we looked at in session 2 around using AI, that idea of our context times our command equals content. We have to have both of those things, right? That's why we chose multiplication for that. If either is 0, content's going to be 0. Some time to give and receive feedback to each other as you are working on building those templates, as you're working on getting the questions, finding questions in your curriculum, and then the last step will be transforming that stuff into engaging tasks. Like we need high quality, rigorous questions and items, things that look like fast, things that are as rigorous as fast, things that are aligned to the high end of the spectrum on our benchmarks. But if we don't have productive ways for students to engage with it, they're not, the chance that they learn it is a lot less. So we're also going to talk about planning for that. So a little bit of context for our unit so you know what we are getting into. NSO 2.4, so 5th grade, NSO 2.4. So explore multiplication, division of multi-digit numbers with decimals. That's the big step up in 5th grade, is now we're also using decimals. In 4th grade, not using decimals. The clarifications around the dividends and divisors, or the length of them, is also a little bit different. So 5th grade division just gets a little bit more complex. We're also going to have some 5AR11, which is solving multi-step real-world problems. That can include division, where students also interpret remainders. The reason I chose these benchmarks last time in Rural Connect Session 2, we did basically the 4th grade version of this. And so I wanted to kind of show that vertical connection. So imagine like you were 4th graders at Rural Connect 2. Congratulations, you passed 4th grade. Now you're in 5th grade and we're doing the same stuff, just the 5th grade versions of it. And I also want to be really clear in how I wrote these. So I used the AI template that I gave y'all in Rural Connect Session 2. I did the work that's in those first 4 questions. What's the benchmark? What are the clarifications? What are the connecting benchmarks? What are common student misconceptions? I pulled stuff from the ALDs. I looked at some online curriculums, found a bunch of examples. I filled up that template. If you want to see exactly what I put in the template, I put it in the folders for you. So if y'all want to take a second, if you will, take a second. There's a blank copy of the template. There's also a copy of the template that has the stuff that I put in when I planned this. So I'll give you a couple minutes just to skim through that. Don't look too closely, because just like last time, I told y'all when I'm working with ChatGPT, my grammar skills, I just kind of let them go. I trust that it's going to figure me out. So don't critique it too much. Leave your red pens in your bags. But I just want to be really transparent around how I planned this content. So I filled that template out. I know it looks like a lot of text, but it was mostly copying and pasting. If I had to guess, it probably took me 5-ish minutes to put that template together, and then I just plugged that template right into ChatGPT. I was lucky enough to still be on my free allotment of GPT-4 when I did this, so I was getting good answers for this. And then it just gave me a ton of questions. I do want to be honest with you. I didn't just start with the questions it gave me. I did go through a little bit of iteration. Like the first round of questions, there were some things that weren't aligned. So I had to be like, hey, remember, like the divisors have to look like this. They can't fall outside of this range. Remember the multi-step problems aren't supposed to have decimals, right? We are dividing with decimals, but AR11, the multi-step, is whole numbers. So no decimals if it's word problems that are multi-step. I had to remind it of a couple of things. There were some areas where I thought, I need more words here, I need less words here. So I did do a little bit of tweaking probably spent, I don't know, 45 minutes to an hour from start to finish, where I then had like 100 questions plus the curriculum that I was looking at, questions in there to pull from. So after about an hour, I had all of that. If I taught 5th grade again next year, I don't have to do it again, right? I have it all. So I spent about an hour doing that, got a ton of questions. Once I had my questions, then I went through the process that we talked about at Rural Connect 2, looking for opportunities for tasks. Like, what questions make sense to be a carousel? What questions make sense that could turn into a sort? What questions make sense that I could use a placemat? The first one we're going to do is a carousel. There were like 2 or 3 word problems that I thought would work really well for a carousel, but I needed more. So I was like, hey, can you give me 4 more versions of number 3 or whatever? And it gave me 4 more versions of what that question was. So that's how these came to be. I just want to be really transparent. I tried to honor what we talked about in Rural Connect 2 as I wrote these. So we're going to do a little bit of review first. You are my 5th grade students. And so we're going to look at a problem real quick, and this is going to, like, I would do this whole group with students prior to doing the task that you're going to do afterwards. So division review, a few reminders, some things you might have learned in 4th grade that I just want you to kind of keep at the front of your mind when we start doing some of this work. So first of all, stay organized, right? You learned last year in 4th grade the numbers got a little bigger. And as the numbers get bigger, it's easy to get a little messier and unorganized. So we need some kind of model. We need some way of staying organized. I'm going to review with y'all what we're going to do and how we're going to do that. But we want to stay organized. We also want to use what we know to figure out what we do not. And I think it's helpful to write that down. So when we look at our problem, if there are things that we know that might help us, we're going to write that stuff down because we can go back to it. It might help us answer the question and figure out the things we don't know. We're dividing, so I'm thinking like what we know about multiplication might be really helpful. Also, as numbers get bigger, I think it's more and more and more important that we estimate so that we can assess for reasonableness. I don't want to get an answer and assume it's right. Like I might have made a mistake. Like bigger numbers, there's a lot of steps, but if I know first what's close, then that can help me determine, yeah, my answer's probably right. I thought it was going to be around 100, and I got 100.4. So you know what? I'm probably good. So we want to estimate. And also, we don't always use remainders in the same way. So remember that. When we're dealing with context, you learned last year in 4th grade, sometimes with remainders, we need the remainder. Sometimes we have to ignore the remainder. And sometimes we have to round differently depending on what the context tells us. So a couple things to remember. All right, there should be sticky notes. So grab a sticky note, that way you have somewhere just to jot your ideas down. It doesn't have to be formal, but I am going to ask you some questions, and it might be helpful to write some things down. So I'm going to read this to you, and then I just want you to think about this question. What is the problem about? So I'm going to read it to you, and then you're just going to think, what is the problem about? So a concession stand has some amount of hamburger buns. I don't know how many hamburger buns, but they have some amount for the upcoming week of games. They do not plan on buying more buns. They got to use the buns they have. Right? Buns go bad faster than frozen burgers. Hamburgers come in boxes of some amount. How many boxes of hamburgers should they buy? So I just want you to think, what is this about? 10 seconds on your own. If it helps to jot something down, jot it down. If you're ready to talk about it, just wait 5 more seconds, and then I'll let you talk about it. All right, talk in your groups. What is this problem about?
Hamburger buns. Hamburgers. The amount of hamburger buns they have. So they can figure out what they're wanting to purchase.
All right, so what is this about? What's going on? Somebody tell me, what's this about?
They already have a number of hamburger buns, and based on that number, they want to know how many boxes of hamburgers they should buy.
So we've got some buns, and we're trying to figure out how many hamburgers we need to buy based on how many buns we have. Okay, all right, yeah, I think that's what it's about. That works. What are we trying to find? Like, what is the question actually asking? And I want you to be really specific when you talk about it in your groups, okay? What are we trying to find? What's the question asking? All right, so I heard specifically how many boxes of hamburgers we should buy. So not how many hamburgers we should buy, but how many boxes we should buy. All right, so here's the last question I'm going to ask, and then I'm going to show you the numbers, and we'll figure out how many boxes we need to buy. Once I show you the numbers, what are you going to do with them? Like you can't do it yet because you don't know the numbers, but talk in your groups. What are we going to do with the numbers?
It's going to be multiplying.
We're gonna divide the hamburgers into
The boxes.
Yeah, the boxes and hamburgers.
Yeah.
You said multiply. How could we use multiplication? Because I think we could.
Well, hamburgers per box.
Yeah.
You have so many hamburgers per box, and you're going to have a total number of buns. So
So we're probably gonna have to use more than one operation,
right,
more than one
Okay.
step.
and because you could do this
Boxes time
this.
black equals your buns.
I'm hearing mostly divide. We're going to divide our number of buns by however many burgers are in each box. But I also heard one group talk about multiplication. Like we could just multiply up and figure out like how to get close. So that's another idea. It would work. So I want to honor both of those. So we could divide. That'll give us the number. But we could also multiply. If we divide, change my mind. I'm going to ask one more question before I show you the numbers. If we divide, I want you to talk one more time. If we wind up with a remainder, what are we going to have to do with it? So talk in your groups. If we divide and if we end up with a remainder, what are we going to have to do with the remainder?
Use all the buns, you can freeze the hamburgers, so.
We're gonna add one more. We're gonna round up.
You
get
gotta
another
round up.
box.
Because you freeze the burgers. They're not going bad. Buns are going bad, though.
Yep.
Way we have
I have
enough.
to buy
Have to round up. Yeah. Have to round it up.
there's a bunch of the box.
Buns are going bad, though.
So you have to interpret
Do
the
we want to
remainder.
do that?
So what would we do with the remainder?
A remainder of hamburgers or buns?
So like if we divided and we got like 12 remainder 3, how is that remainder 3 going to inform how many boxes I need to buy?
You're gonna have to buy an extra box.
Oh, no. But it depends on how many are in the box.
Yeah.
Because
Oh,
you-
there's
you
only 2 in
have
a box.
three.
Yeah, but if we know the remainder is 3, like there's more than 3 in a box, we'd have to buy an extra box.
Or give them a
If we want to use all the buns. Okay, all right. All right, so what I'm hearing is if we want to use all the buns, we've got to buy an extra box, right? And I even heard one group say we can freeze the burgers. They're going to be fine. If we want to use all the buns, we've got to buy an extra box. All right, so here's our numbers, but we're going to do this together because I want to remember I said one of the things we have to do is stay organized as our numbers get a little more complex. So I'm going to remind you of a strategy that you might have used in 4th grade or a model that you might have used in 4th grade to do that. So if you want to follow along, you can. If you want to just watch, you can. Either is fine. But I'm gonna think I've got 327. I've got 327 buns, and I want to see like how many of these boxes of 24 burgers can go into that, right? Now, before I start dividing, I actually want to use what you said about multiplication. I like that idea. I don't know how many boxes I need, right? I don't know how many boxes would get me to 327. But I have a feeling that we might know how many boxes get us to some other numbers. Are there any other numbers of boxes that you would be confident in knowing? 10, yeah. How many would be in 10?
240.
Yeah, because 24 times 10 is 240. I didn't give myself enough room there. Any other amounts of boxes that you can just call them out. It's okay.
5.
5. How many would be in 5?
120.
All right. How'd you figure that out? Oh yeah, we knew the 240, and that was 10. 5 is half of 10, so half would just be 120. Okay. Anything else? What about 2? Anybody know 2? 48. Yeah, 2 would be 48. All right. Anything else y'all want to add? That's okay. None of those are 327, so we still need to divide here. All right. So, but one of those numbers was like getting closer, right? 240. Like if I bought 10 boxes, like would I be buying too much? I wouldn't be buying too much. So I'm going to go ahead and buy 10 boxes. I'm going to buy 10 boxes, 240. Need to figure out how many buns I still have left after I account for the 240 burgers. So to get to 300 is 60, 87. All right, so I still have 87 buns. I don't want the buns to go bad. How many boxes should we buy now? What do you think? And we can use what we know.
At least 3.
2, 3.
2 will be
2, 3, 4.
4.
I'm gonna go. I've got 2 up here. I think if I go 3, I might have to do some regrouping. So let's just stick with 2 for now. So if I bought 2 boxes, how many burgers is that? 48. Okay, and then we have 50 plus 2, 3, 39. You know, doing math in front of math teachers is terrible. All right, so 39. I think I can still buy another box, right? I'm going to buy 1 more box. That's 24 more burgers. I've got, what, 15 left?
15 in the freezer.
All right. So, 15 in the freezer, what do you mean?
That's what we have left over. We don't have enough funds, so.
Yeah, so if I got 13 boxes, right, I heard someone said that's the buns. I still got 15 buns, right? I still have 15 buns that I need to use. So what do I got to do? Yeah, so actually, I'm going to buy 14. I'm going to buy 14 boxes of burgers. Okay. All right. So again, that was just a kind of review, kind of reminder. We're thinking about division and word problems. We got to think about the remainder, what it means. And then also when we're dividing, this partial quotient strategy and this way of modeling can kind of help us stay organized. And I also think it's helpful if we start by thinking about what we do know. Like, let's write them down, right? Let's figure out what we do know. Let's write that stuff down. We pulled from it. We're like, hey, we can do 10. We got that number. We can do 2. We got that number. All right, we got to do 1 more, right?
I was thinking about, because you said estimating, and I was thinking about, okay, 4 quarters makes $1. And so 4 times 3, and that's, I estimated, I estimated at 13, but I
Pretty good.
should have went up.
Pretty good. All right, so we had this contextual problem, went through the 3 read strategy. I guess it was kind of 4 reads because I asked you 4 questions before I gave you the numbers. But we went through that, talked about remainders, interpreting remainders. That's going to be really helpful in just a moment. And then also we went through the partial quotient strategy, leaned on what we knew about multiplication, jotted some of that down, used the model. I've heard that model called many things. I think most frequently it's called Big 7 because it kind of looks like a Big 7. I'm okay with that name. So we went through that model using that partial quotient strategy, got our answer. And so if you were my 5th grade class, that would have happened, and then we would jump right into this next task. So I designed this task, or I took the questions and turned the questions into a task with a carousel in mind. But we're going to do this carousel a little differently for a couple reasons. One being, I think it'll be easier with the crew here to kind of keep things at the tables where the microphones and all are. Secondly, I like to model different ways to do tasks. With a carousel, sometimes, and I've had this in classes before, like kids moving around just isn't feasible for a couple of reasons. One, maybe space. Like when I taught Algebra 2 at a high school, I had a room like maybe a third the size of this whole room and 35 17-year-olds in the class. Like we weren't moving, but I still want to do tasks that bring in bigger collaboration. Like the movement's nice, but another cool thing about a carousel is you get everyone in the class to collaborate with each other, even if you're not at that group, because we're rotating this stuff. So an easy modification is instead of us rotating, the stuff rotates. So everyone should have a clipboard. On the clipboard are 2 things. There's a blank sheet of paper. If you want to take the blank sheet of paper out of the clipboard, you can do that because this is what you're going to write on. And then the questions you can just leave. You can leave that on the clipboard. You won't need to take those off. So just leave those on the clipboard, but the blank paper is what you'll write on. So imagine like the way we've done carousels, this is just your chart paper. I want to give a shout out. way I did this numberless word problem, I didn't think of this. I saw this in a classroom a couple weeks ago, and I was like, that's so smart. I'm stealing that idea. So if you remember, the way I've done it before is I'll just print ones with blanks, and then I have to hand out the numbers. This was so smart. So this was cool. I saw this at Riverside a couple weeks ago. I can't remember whose classroom I saw it in, though, but it was at Riverside. I saw it a couple weeks ago. So when we get there, I'll tell you to take the stickers off. Don't take the stickers off yet. All right. So everyone's got their contextual problems. You've got your paper to write on, so we're going to jump right into this. So our first question, you're going to read your problems as a group. Our first question, what is the question about? What is it asking us to find? So discuss that, and then one person in the group, jot it down on that blank sheet of paper you have.
Oh, gee, you're holding it in, writing it. Multitasking.
Packed in bags. And what do we need to know? Yeah. Right. What's asking to find us?
Yeah.
So remember, I want you talking and writing. What is it about, and what is it asking us to find?
How many bags?
What's it about? What's it asking us to find? All right, so here's your next prompt. You don't have the numbers, so it's kind of hypothetical, but you have enough context to answer this question. So what will you do with the numbers? You're coming up with a plan. What are you going to do once you have the numbers? That's what you're going to talk about, and that's what you're going to write down.
Add the morning.
Yeah, I guess it should say how many bags were used, not how many bags are needed. I think you're onto something.
Yeah.
It wasn't
Or I
me.
was thinking if you
It
were.
was ChatGPT. It wasn't me.
Okay, yeah. Blame. I was
Add
thinking
the
if you were
morning
wanting
and
to
afternoon
project
together.
what's needed for tomorrow or the next Tuesday or whatever was what I was thinking as
They're
far as
asking how many do you need to do that?
Right.
With what
How
you
many
got.
days I needed to
sold.
do that you sold.
Right.
But I gotcha.
Right, so question, yeah, ChatGPT.
Add the morning and afternoon together and then divide it by how much is in one, how many pounds are in one bag.
So I see where, okay, all right, kudos to you, ma'am.
I read. Divide by
How many?
number of pounds.
At least it's not about, somebody with an insane amount of watermelons,
Touche.
We can try to have
Pounds
context that makes sense,
bag
but
by
at
the
some
number.
point it's a little contrived. It's hard to avoid all bits of
So the difference between
contrivedness, is that a word?
this fourth grade and fifth grade is just the digits.
So,
Like that could be a fourth grade question, right?
no, because it's multi-step. So, well, it's the multi-step and the digits, it's both. You're right, it's
But
the
if they were
digits.
easy numbers,
Right,
they
if
should
they were-
they should know how to do that.
Yes. Yeah, they have the skills. Yeah. But yeah, the digits. So fourth grade limited to single digit divisors and there's no decimals. Fifth grade, multi-digit divisors and decimals.
So yeah, you could.
And then I'm trying to think, is there a multi-step word problem that
Something.
includes division in fourth grade?
I don't know about
What, fifth
including
grade?
division.
Oh, sorry. I don't know.
In fourth grade? I can't
Third grade, you
remember.
can get all 4 operations, multi-step.
Okay. Yeah, and it would be, I think it would be AR21 or AR2 something.
That's what I'm thinking. If they should know how to do this so far.
Subtract.
Meters in morning and meters by meters sold.
Yeah, the total you started with, you subtract how much you sold.
Yeah, I was
And
gonna say
then
actually
take
meters
what
sold
you
goes
sold.
first, but it's not the first number, but that's how you say it.
Subtract meters sold from
Then divide
in bulk
remaining.
Original bulk number.
then
Take the difference and divide.
The remaining
Extra,
divide.
At some point, it's a little contrived.
right.
It's hard
So
to
the difference.
avoid
So
all
Yeah, take the difference.
Divide the difference. That's smart. I like that word.
Yeah, we're really pushing math vocabulary.
vocab. So then divide the difference by the number of meters per each roll.
How do we know the maximum number of rolls here?
It holds this many meters, so this number is in meters. But when you divide by this,
After you fill all
the
that you can
remainder
fill.
is what's left over. That's what the answer
So
is.
that's the
This will
maximum
tell me the
number.
number, and then this will give us the leftover.
The most rolls, because maximum, like the most rolls that can be made will be all of it, and then the remainder will be how much is left over. Right?
Yep. And how many rolls did you fill and how much fabric is left over? That's the remainder.
I
is the
wish
answer.
that the answer was 2 parts, like part A and part B. And it might be, who knows?
In high school, is this slope intercept form?
Mm-hmm.
So y equals mx plus b.
Yeah, like
Subtract, divide.
blank X minus. Yeah.
Once you're ready, I'll know you're ready to rotate around if you put those documents back on the clipboard. Okay, put it back on the clipboard. We'll rotate again. All right, I'll give you a minute to like recenter with your new problem. This is again a new problem. So read your new problem, see what the last group has written or the last groups have written. All right, here's your next prompt. How will you use the remainder to answer the question? So I noticed every group at some point had division. You needed to do some division. So if you have a remainder, how are you going to use the remainder to help answer the question?
So the question is, what do they want to do? If there's a remainder,
Right, because it won't be the full weight.
what do we do with that bread? We want the full weight in the bag, so we would ignore. That would be the ignore.
Divided into 4. We have 1 pound that's not being used.
So that can't fill up a whole nother bag. It says how many bags are needed if we want to pack them into this many pounds per.
Yeah, so you
per
would
bag.
ignore it. You'd eat the
This
bread
is-
and
I
ignore
don't
the
know if it's
remainder.
poorly written, or if we're supposed to ignore
I
it.
think you truncate it. Yeah,
Right? Just ignore.
Yeah.
That would be the.
because that's just scrap.
Alright.
Round up.
By adding 1
There you go.
to the whole number. But it's not really rounding.
it's not really rounding, but it's rounding.
It is not rounding.
No, it's not. Well, no, it's not.
not.
It's not. It's not.
But that's what people call it.
Well, yeah, but add 1 more
To the whole number.
to the.
It might also be rounding if it happens
It
to
may
be
be
more than
round.
half.
Oh, I see what you're saying, not the literal term of.
Right, rounding. Yeah.
But if I teach them the literal term of rounding,
I
then
agree. Right.
I got to use it literal every time.
Yeah.
All right, when you're ready, put those back in the clipboard. We'll rotate them around again. You should be getting the one you started with, so it'll be familiar now. I'm going to go ahead and give you the next prompt. All right, so what I need you to do now is go ahead and take those stickers off, reveal the numbers, and I don't want you to find the actual answer yet. I'm going to give you a choice. All right, I'm going to give you a choice. Answer either what is too much or what is not enough. So you're not answering both. I want you to pick which one as a group you want to answer. Like how much is too much or how much is not enough, and how do you know? So trying to answer the big question, what's too much or what's not enough, how do you know?
243 pounds of bread in the morning, and the bread is breakfast. How many bags are needed? Well, we know 1 bag's not going to be enough.
What do you have?
So 243 minus
So
190. Basically, like
if you rounded,
like
if you
estimated.
estimated, you'd have
So we almost had
45,
250
basically.
and 200. So 250 and 200.
You have about 50 left. Because if you use
But if you
compensation,
Yeah. So we know.
200 and 240.
So we know
So you're
one's
gonna
not
have
enough.
5 bags. About.
I'm looking up the 4th grade benchmark now.
So what is too much? What is not enough?
What did we say was too much?
Well, too much would be 10 bags.
Yeah, 10 bags would be too many.
Yes, write that down.
1
So
is
you
not
choose
enough.
which one you want.
10 is too many.
Not enough, you said was 2?
1.
1. Yeah.
0.
Yeah.
How do we know? How do we know?
So for me, I was thinking, I went and added that already. And so when I added that, I forgot the numbers, like 441 or something like that, close to that. So I was just going 5 times 9 is 45. And I just added a 0, so then I knew that 90 was too much. You know, then I just stopped at there. Yeah. That's kind of what I did. Because I remember we had to do like a division at the end, so I know it was dividing by 5.
Yeah. We're dividing the difference of these.
You said 90 was too much?
So, because I read the bread is the baker's
Pounds of bread in the morning.
a certain amount in the morning, certain amount in the afternoon. Then it's packed into bags weighing 5 pounds each.
So
I
you
just
really
added,
could,
so I just
you
added
could
both of
divide
them
both
together.
and then add the
Yeah.
quotients together,
Now you're
or
saying.
you could combine them
Yeah.
first. So there's really
Okay.
2 ways you could solve it.
Right.
Now what you're saying.
Okay.
We know how. Because what?
7 wasn't enough?
90 might be the answer.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, because
I didn't think about that.
if you did like, yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Okay.
In context, including.
Because 200 divided by 5 would be 40.
Yeah.
250 divided by 5 is,
Yeah.
yeah, 50. So 50 and 40 is 90. That's what I was kind of thinking.
So our answers are. They're sold 243 bucks.
90 is 450. Right.
Real world,
And that-
all 4
the
operations,
total there
and
is
interpreting
for
remainder,
41.
all of that together is uniquely.
90 might be too many.
90 is too.
Yeah, 89.
90 is too many.
Right?
Or even if you said
Because we rounded up.
Because-
Right, we
yeah.
rounded up.
The multi-step makes it.
89 would be what, 445?
So it'd be 241 and 200 if you're using compensation.
Right. So, but anything.
So 1250 and 840 is too much. Like, those cannot be the answer.
Correct. So,
A number bigger than 1250 cannot be the answer, because that's how much we started with. And then we gave some away.
How much fabric will be left? They want to know the literal remainder, so it has to be less than 4.
Oh, good job.
oh yeah.
I'm looking up the 4th grade benchmark now because
That
I'm
little
curious
higher
if I
order
messed
thinking
up.
going on
I
from
mean,
my
these
friend.
are.
And yet,
Are we
I
supposed
can't-
to
All multi-set?
Are we supposed to be writing this down, ladies?
Yes, they're all multi-step.
Are we supposed to be writing this down?
Yes, write that down. So you choose which one you want and write that down.
Only I can
What is way too
What,
much?
What is way too much? 1250, 840, and anything bigger than 4 or more.
So what do I
So
write?
anything more than 4.
Anything
Really,
more than
anything
There
more
you
than
go.
4.
Yeah. Narrow it down. Use that alligator. Anything greater?
More than 4?
Because if it was 4, that could be another roll. Anything more than that would be more than 1 roll.
All right, put everything back together. Let's rotate again. Now this next step, it might get a little messy. Like the work the last group did, it's definitely going to help you. It might help you more than you want it to. Like it might actually lead you to something, and that's okay. Use it. Remember, we want to use what we know to figure out what we don't. So I want to know what might be close. So the last group either got like too much or not enough. I want you to see if you can get a little closer, but we're still not trying to like actually add or subtract or divide. We're not trying to get the real answer. We just want to try to get a little closer through estimating. So what might be close? Write the number down, and then also how do you arrive at that? So I would say their 500 is pretty close. Like if we think about like common differences, 682 minus 236, that is going to be pretty close to 700 minus 200.
So then can we find a multiple of 8 that would make it easier to mentally divide?
So maybe.
I was thinking, 7. I might be wrong, but I was thinking around it to 236 to 240, just because I know I can divide 8 into 2.
2024 is a multiple of
Yeah.
8. Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking too.
So if you use 240,
And 680.
well 680 and 240 would be 440. Yeah, so can you get to 8 with 440 or closer?
445. That would be, yeah.
50.
Oh, still 50. Interesting. Okay.
Like, oh,
So
well, never mind.
close, but I think you've got a tighter estimate though. Like you used numbers that were closer together. Yeah, 440 and 8. 8 times 50 would be 400. So is it going to be a little more than 50 or a little less than 50? Be a little more than 50. Okay, so maybe go a little more than 50.
Because
A little less.
51 would be far away. 52.
Right.
So
Oh, yeah.
60.
Would be 50, yeah. So it'd be
50, yeah,
It'd be a little
55.
less.
55 would be right at 440.
So,
Right.
Oh, so you went with 80.
I mean, like, y'all way over my head. I don't know what you're talking about.
But I agree with what you said. He's looking for, because we know 8.
Yeah.
And we know they
Honestly,
need to
this
be
is
multiples
literally
of
how I
8.
think. So
Right.
for me, it's, if I was solving
You're finding
this,
friendly numbers.
I'm going
to 8.
640, and then I'm going to add that 42 later on, and then
Right.
just divide 8 by 640, and then add 42 after. So
Good
I don't know
job
what...
decomposing your numbers.
That's what I do. So I don't know when y'all start talking this 50-52 stuff. I don't know what they're talking about right now.
You're looking for friendly numbers.
Getting closer, yeah.
Yeah.
Just getting closer to, or trying to figure out the in between
less
one.
than. Okay.
But it is interesting how like all of our math brains think differently. I always tell the kids that too. It's taking different routes to get to the same place.
All right, let's rotate. I know you've seen the problems I'm rotating you towards now, but there's a lot of new information. There's a couple estimates on there. So I want to give you all a second to check those estimates out before I give you the next step. What I want you to do now is do the arithmetic, both steps. So they all had a couple of steps. Do that, whatever that first step is, and then go ahead and do the division. You don't have to use this strategy and model that we reviewed earlier, but you can if you want. I would encourage you. It helps to stay organized, helps to use what we know. We've already been doing some estimates and thinking about multiplication, so it will be helpful. But go ahead and do the arithmetic, both steps. So I know this is going to be kind of hard, but notice that all I'm asking you to do in step 6 is the arithmetic. Don't answer the question. Just give me the number. Don't answer the question. Just give the number, put it back on the clipboard, and you're done. All right, final step. I want you to write a sentence that answers the question. So if we look back at number 1, we wrote, like, what's it asking us to find? So I want you to answer that question using the number that the last group just found in number 6. Also remember what you talked about at step 3. You've got to think about what the remainder means in the question. Use that thinking as well. So write a sentence that answers the question.
So you have to write a sentence that answers the question.
So they did the division, they got a remainder of 2, but they put 0.5 as the answer instead of.
How are we using the remainder in this question?
That's how much will be left over. So we'll have 2 meters, 2 meters left over.
2 meters.
But this division doesn't help you know that if you change it
Correct.
to 0.5, because
Correct.
it's half of 4 meters.
Yeah, correct.
So you would have 2.
That was a very astute observation.
Because I was like,
No, you can't have a 0.5
we
decimal.
need to buy.
I tell my kids, if you have a 0.5 as your answer on your homework, I know you used a calculator.
Yep.
Because we don't do
Touche.
0.5.
That's right.
Say that calculator
But
till
that's
5th grade, though.
2 meters.
Right. But they're not using calculator in 5th grade yet.
No.
I don't think it's till 6th grade, but they can use, right? 6th or 7th grade they can use calculator?
I think so.
I'm not sure.
But I mean, they would have a decimal though. Right.
Right, but she's saying
It
that
wouldn't be 0.5.
She would be able
It would
to.
be
She would be able to figure out her kiddos if yeah.
Leftover after
After
left after filling.
the rolls. Then,
How many bags are needed? So this was the bread. They sold an amount in the morning, amount in the afternoon, and then whatever
So rice and
left, they're putting in 5-pound.
And it looks like they got
Bags.
88.2 pound, right? Is that how they did it?
So you would have to have another bag.
You have to have another
in
bag
order
to fit it.
get the remainder. So in this case,
We're
you
using-
add one to the quotient.
Correct.
But you're answering the question, what is the question about? What is it asking us to find? So we're saying the store
That was a
needed,
very
the store needs to, or we need, as a store owner, we need to buy 89
89
bags.
The bakery. Right, I'm just writing it in a sentence. Yes. Okay, I can do that.
What the remainder is, we're
The
gonna make
bakery
decisions no matter what.
needs
If there was a remainder.
to buy
Okay.
89.
Gotcha. So even if it was like remainder one, or what's the quotient?
Remainder's 5 pound bags of bread. Right?
Good man.
But we didn't know how much they weighed at the beginning.
Right, since I answered the question, the baker needs to buy 89 bags.
All right. Whenever y'all are ready, feel free to put those, we're not rotating again. That's it. That's the last step. Feel free to put those there. You can set them to the side. We'll clean it up later. That way we can just roll right into the next few things. So I want to remind y'all, when all of these model tasks we've done throughout the year, I've tried to be really clear that these aren't like a perfectly linear consecutive unit. They're like little snips. The 3 we're going to do today, that was the first of the 3. They are in order. Like I would do this before I do the next thing, before I do the third thing. But there's stuff in between. So don't think that like what we're jumping to next would be the next day. It might be 3 or 4 days, or depending on what's happening in class or formative assessment data I get. So I want to be really clear. I'm not implying that like this is 3 days of instruction in a row. So that didn't have decimals. We talked earlier that we're, 5th grade, we're getting into decimals. So maybe a few days go by, we're working on that. I would probably, depending on what my curriculum did and how much I liked my curriculum, I would probably start with that benchmark before going into decimals because it is more similar to what we did in 4th grade. Because that benchmark clarifies whole numbers only. 4th grade, we worked with whole numbers. Divisors can get bigger. All of those were single-digit divisors. They can also be 2-digit divisors, so I would need to work up the 2-digit divisors as well before getting into decimals. So those kinds of things would be happening. When we get into decimals, I'm going to do a quick whole group task with you of how I might introduce dividing with decimals with my 5th grade students, and then we'll get into the engaging task after that's designed for that. So we're going to talk about dividing with decimals. So something like 18.94 divided by 2.3. Now, I don't want you to think about what that exactly is. Don't try to figure it out. It's okay. Leave your calculators aside. It's okay. We're not actually ever going to talk about the real answer here, and that's okay. I just want us thinking about what it means to divide by decimals. All right? So the first question I want to ask, and I'm going to ask it in 2 ways. So I'm going to ask it kind of directly, like I have asked you all many questions before. But because dividing with decimals is kind of complex, I want to elaborate on what I mean. So what quotient would be too much? So I want you to figure out something that, that's too much. That answer is too big. What I mean by that is how many 2.3s would be more than 18.94? All right, so I want you to think about that for about 10 seconds on your own, right? Think about like I got 2.3 and another 2.3 and another 2.3. I got a bunch of 2.3s. What's a kind of friendly number that you know that would be too much? All right, share in your groups. Share in your groups what number and how do you know?
10. 10 is friendly. Because that'd be 20.
2.3s would be 20.
Oh, that'd be 23.
Or you could say
But not over 20.
All right, what'd y'all say? 10. Yeah, I heard really quickly 10. All right, and because 10 2.3s would be 23. Right? We can just scale that up. 2.3 times 10 would be 23. 23 is more than 18.94. So 23 is too much. My quotient's going to be less than 10. All right, next question, you probably guessed. How much is not enough? So something you're confident that more would fit, right? And don't say 1. 1 is not enough, all right? But I want something bigger than 1. What is something that, you can think of it kind of easily, but you're also pretty sure that it's going to be more. Like I could still fit more. Talk in your groups. How much is not enough? How do you know? All right, so I want to document our conversation. I should have started this earlier. So we know, so let's see, 18.94 divided by 2.3. We said 2.3 times 10 was 23, so that's too much. All right, let me hear some of your answers for not enough. What's something that you're confident is not enough? 7. Did I hear any other numbers? Anyone say anything else? 9. Anything else? 5. All right. Oh. Okay. Okay. All right. So I want to talk about all 3 of those numbers, if that's okay. We'll work our way up. So 5. How much would 5 2.3s be? Yeah, 11 and a half. 11.5, because we know 5 is half of 10. So 11 and a half is half of 23. I also heard 7. Kevin, how did you think about 7?
Because I did 2.3 plus 2.3, which is 4.6, and I added that to my 11 and a half.
Oh, so you figured out 11 and a half first,
Yeah.
and then you just added 4, like you just added it to, well, I'm going to add 2.3 times 2 on here. You knew that was 4.6, so you just added those 2 together to get, what is that, 16.1?
Yeah.
All right. All right, so I'm going to stop there, if that's okay. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to leave a little space. So it's going to have to be between 7 and 10. Do y'all agree? It's going to have, like, because this is not enough. And the 10 is too much. All right, so last question. What might be close? And I want you to use what you already know. So that's why I wanted to write it down. That's what we already know. I want you to use what we already know to talk in your groups. Pick a number that might be pretty close. You don't have to figure out how close, but pick a number that's pretty close. So will it be closer to 7 or closer to 10?
10.
Closer to 10.
Why will it be closer to 10?
We got it down to 9.
Got it down to 9?
Because 9 groups of 2 would be 18, and 9 groups of 0.3 would be 0.27.
Oh.
And it can't be 10, so it's between 9 and 10. Half of it. I
So
think
you
it'd be
figured
too
out that
big.
9 was still
A little
not
bit.
enough.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
too-
How close was 9?
Close. Pretty close.
Closer than 10?
Yeah, I think it's closer to 9.
Yes.
Because
So, like,
half, between half,
Okay.
would be too much.
All right. So let me hear some of y'all's estimates. What do y'all think?
I think
8.
8.
8. I heard a 9 point something over here. They actually figured out 9 as well, and 9 wasn't enough, but it was really close. And so maybe just a little bit more.
Okay, we might be wrong.
I didn't check your math. I trusted you. I'm
9
sorry.
puts you at 20.6.
Yeah,
9's too much.
18 plus, yeah, plus 2.7. Yeah, that'd be 20.7. Yeah, but 20.7 is closer than 10. So yeah, so 8 point something. 8 point something feel good? All right, 8 point something. All right, so we're going to go into our next task now. This would be consecutive. So like I would do that task to tee up this task. So this would be consecutive. So in these envelopes, you're going to see a couple different kinds of cards. There are some cards that have a bunch of expressions on them. And then there's also some cards that have headers. They look like this. I want you to take the headers, flip them upside down, don't look at them, set them to the side. We're not going to use these headers right now.
I got a question for you. So that first activity we just did, how long would that typically take in a 5th grade class?
Pretty similar to what we just did, I think. I would move it along. I wouldn't let it drag. All right, so again, take those headers, put the headers away, ignore them, don't look at them, don't read them. With kids, I would not pass them out. Y'all are adults, so I'm trying to be efficient, and so I went ahead and gave them to you. So put those away. So here's your first set of instructions. I want you to create categories based on whatever you notice. I'm not giving you categories. I'm not giving you headers. You sort them based on whatever you notice. So what categories are starting to emerge for y'all?
Yes, you people that are moving them, what categories are starting
They
to
were
emerge?
categories in tens and hundreds is what it looked like.
The
The
dividends.
that's why I was.
The dividends.
The whole number.
Okay.
Oh, but yeah, this one's
So you've
throwing-
got dividends
this
more
one's
than
throwing us,
100, dividends less than 100. Okay. Why is that one by itself?
Well, just looking. We've got.
Oh, the divisors.
Divisor.
3 digits.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What's different about that one?
This less than one.
Oh, divisor's less than 1.
So maybe an outlier.
I want you to grab some sticky notes and label your categories. I want to be able to walk around and see what your categories are real quickly.
All right, when friendly numbers is 1.
This is the only one that the decimal place would move 2 places.
And I'm separating these as well.
So what do you want the first category name to be?
So that could actually be sorted out.
Easy to estimate.
Friendly divisors.
So the 3-digit whole number. So this one could actually be
These are friendly numbers. These are longer numbers. They're not necessarily bigger, they're just longer.
More digits.
Right.
These would be 2 digits.
So would you want to put these back here? Because these are just 2-digit whole numbers.
Quotient will be larger than the divisor as dividend.
What'd you say?
Well, this is only one by itself. I don't know if we want to.
Yeah.
There's 2 things. One, this one has you move the decimal 2 places, but also the quotient would be larger than the dividend because you're dividing it by less than 1. And that's the only one that's like that.
I'm looking by the divisor.
Going in order by divisor.
Yeah.
Okay.
We know what we meant by that. Right, because that's less than 1.
15
And then what do you want to label this? Like,
15 more seconds.
they all have.
4 digit. Does that make them?
To me, it's more the divisor that you look at because that's where you know, you start there to know, do I need to move my decimal?
Yeah.
What's on the outside and move it, what's on the inside. And again, this is the only one that you'd have to move it twice on the inside.
Oh, I was
How would
reading
you,
that.
how would you categorize it?
Where is this part
We're
of this?
categorizing.
So which other ones?
What are the divisions?
Okay.
So Lisa likes it.
We're just categorizing. We're making categories.
If we're estimating, I would say this is friendly, this is 3.
This is very friendly.
They're going into their 2-digit with a 2
He's
or
saying because
1.
that one has nothing as a whole number.
Oh.
So that could actually be sorted out.
That one could be by itself.
Yeah.
Because half of that.
Got it.
So
3-digit, correct? We sorted these.
3-digit whole numbers.
Well, there you've got one that's a 2, but then that one doesn't have a decimal.
So this one,
Your divisor is a
so this one could actually be on its
by
own.
itself too, maybe.
Yeah.
2-digit?
Okay, so I'm seeing some thinking around dividends and some around
So would you wanna put
divisors.
these
Yeah.
Is
back
that-
here?
Okay.
So, because these are just 2-digit whole numbers.
And those are all 2-digit whole numbers as well. And those are.
Ah. Okay.
Now we have 2-digit divided by
And then you might
no
want
holes. 3-digit
I don't know if you want them in order.
holes only divided
I'm
by.
anal when it comes to that. I'm looking by the divisors.
Going in order by divisor.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you could get a better estimate that way.
Yeah.
15 more
3
seconds.
digit divided by
Then
2 digit.
switch
15 more
those.
seconds.
That,
And this one we have 2-digit divided by 2-digit whole divided by.
3-digit whole divided by.
No, not that one, right? Because it's 0.
That one's by itself.
yeah.
Oh, I was
How would you,
reading.
how would you categorize it?
2-digit whole divided by no holes.
By a number less than 1.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, all right.
Because trying to keep the verbiage what they're used to hearing.
Right, right.
All right, back together. Don't move anything. We're not done. We're not done. Like taking off the teacher hat, you can take off your student hats. So I don't do this all the time with open sorts, but something I've started doing recently with open sorts, if I have students make headers, I will sometimes ask students to trade headers. So instead of going to you have headers, I'm going to close this sort for you. But a fun thing that I've started doing in the past couple of months is trade headers as the first layer of closed sorts. If I see everybody's seeing kind of some cool things, but people are seeing different cool things, that can be a neat way to increase the collaboration, extend the thinking a little bit. We're not going to do that right now, but I want to throw that out there. That's a little tweak on open sorts that I've been exploring lately. All right, so I want you to grab the headers that I told you to ignore. Pretend that I passed those headers out. So you've got 4 headers. These are going to be your categories based on the quotients. Now, let me be really clear. I do not want you to actually divide these numbers and find real answers. The headers are open enough that I want you to kind of estimate. Think about how many of those divisors might it take to get to that dividend. All right, use what we talked about earlier. The conversation around 10 might be kind of helpful. The conversation around thinking of other numbers to get close might be helpful. So I want you to do some estimating to place those cards into those 4 categories. It won't work out evenly, by the way. So don't think you're wrong if you have a different number of cards in each set. Some might have 2, some might have 4.
I'm thinking the 1, like less than 10.
So 29 divided by 2.
Yeah. What makes it easy? How are you tangled up?
It's probably 40-ish, less than 40.
Bigger than 4. Bigger than 30. 50.
What's the other number?
50 and 2, basically. So 25.
Yeah. Less
3
than
and
10.
18.
Here we go.
Let me ask you this. So I know that's not how you figured it out, but what would 10, because that's the biggest, what would 10 2.6s be?
26.
Oh, it's definitely got to be less than 10.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So the next one too.
Here.
How'd you know that?
Because it'd be 33.
Oh, it'd be 33.
I didn't round the 1.8 to 2.
Yeah.
About
About
50.
50.
Easy as possible.
Yep.
for me.
So 800.
More than 30.
Yeah.
More than 30.
It's so close.
This would be
It's so
30,
close. I
or
wish I
less
was
than
thinking
30.
20 and 30.
Yeah. Is that one? That one's
This one
So I just
143 divided by 10
would be
would be 14.
So that would be
Wouldn't it be?
between 10 and 20.
Yeah.
Are there any more that are kind of standing out to you like that maybe at first glance
Okay, so it's definitely got to be less than
felt
10.
pretty good?
Okay.
Where are those weird ones that were off by themselves in
There's
round 1?
the dividing by
Yeah.
0 by half.
Because half of 14
That
would
one
be
is like 7. Yeah. But it's a little bit more than 17,
And that
but a
was
little bit
like
more than half.
36 divided by 6, that next one.
Well, kind of using your strategy of multiplying the divisor by 10, isn't that what you said you were doing?
So for instance, I was going 2 times 10
Would make that
20.
20.
And so then I knew that it would be
Okay.
between 1 and 10 because I already got, or yeah, 2. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good. Yeah, yeah. So 2.6 times 10, 26.
Yeah.
So you can't get to 10. It's going to be less than 10. Talk to me about this guy.
Well,
0.51 times 10.
So I divided 14 divided by 1, and I
Okay.
got 14. So then I just did half of that because of
7.
0.5.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And I
So we
just
have a
did
number less than 1 here, right?
So it actually should be, wouldn't it be here?
Between 20 and 30? The quotient?
Because would it be double?
Instead of half, because it's a decimal.
Because it's less than 1.
Yeah, I'm saying.
I almost feel like a
thought
rule
about it after you
emerging
said
in
it.
it. Yeah, well, I was kind of using your strategy of the times 10. 0.51 times 10, 5.1. And then can I do that 10 more times and still be less than 14.49? 5.1, 5.1.
He said it the first time. I was like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it gets tricky on there.
Because, yeah, when you divide
Right.
by a half, you're multiplying by
Right.
2.
Yeah.
You're doubling instead of halving.
Yeah,
Yeah,
doubling instead.
yeah, and our brains kind of get used to,
Yeah.
we're dealing with
I think about
whole
it
number,
whenever
whole number,
you're
whole number,
dividing
right?
by
Yeah.
fractions, you're really doing the inverse.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, that one's fun.
Okay, so I'm seeing a bit of a mixture of, like some of them, I see a lot of groups having this conversation. Like, well, I know 10 would be this much, so I know 20 would be this much. And then there are some where like double it and then triple it, it gets a little unfriendly. And so some groups are just kind of rounding the numbers and trying to find friendlier numbers to divide. I like both of those strategies. Everyone has this card except y'all. I stole yours. 14.49, 14 and 49 hundredths, if you're mad when I say point, and 0 and 51 hundredths. So this card is a little different than some of the others. In fact, when I had y'all sort them at first on your own, a couple groups put this one by itself. A group that put it by itself, what did you label that category?
3-digit holes, 2-digit holes. No, that wasn't right.
We did a 2-digit whole
divided by a number.
Ooh, so I heard a couple things. I heard divisor less than 1. I also heard quotient would be greater than the dividend. That's interesting. Here's what I want y'all to look for. I want you to see if that really is unique about this. So take a second, look at all of your cards, and I want you to see, like, is that true? Are the rest of them, the quotient smaller than the dividend? Is this really the only one where the quotient wound up being larger than the dividend? I want to test this a little further. I want to test that idea a little further because one example isn't really enough to say, hey, generally speaking, if this happens, this is going to happen. So I gave y'all each 3 more expressions that also have divisors less than 1. So whatever strategies you were using to estimate earlier, continue to use those strategies. I want you to place these into those categories as well.
That's where I would put it.
So 16
And then that divided by half, if that's times 2, that's also going to go in the middle.
If I have 9 tortillas and I divide each tortilla in half, I'm going to end up with 18 pieces.
Right.
Bigger than the dividend.
That one's, I look at it so much different. I think it's, but it's not 5th grade.
I want to hear
45.
This is not.
I taught 5th grade for like 22
Yeah,
years.
this is, this is like 16 to me times 10 over 9. Keep, change, flip. Which they
Multiply by
wouldn't know.
reciprocal.
Yeah.
And
That
they
one's
learn that with
160.
fractions.
So, like, probably your thought process too is this would be divided by fifths.
This would be
45.6 divided into fifths because it's 0.2.
Yeah.
So if I said in 5, that would be between 1 and 10. So 45 divided by 5 is about 9, so it's 9 point something.
Way over, and we're not even close to 45.
Times 5.
You lost me.
18
Yeah, 10 times 0.5
would be 5.
would be 5. So 20, I gotcha, would be double
Would be
that.
roughly 18. It's doubling that 9, right?
Same thing with the next one.
Right.
That's times 2, that's also going to go in the middle.
Yeah. Be closer to. That's closer to
Right, that
1
one's closer
whole.
to 1. Yeah.
So it'd be 16. Which was the other one? This one?
That one, it's closer to 0. It's still over 0.
So 10 groups would be 2 whole. 20 groups would be 4 whole. 30 groups would be 60.
Just 6?
6.
Yeah.
I don't teach decimals. I'm
Yeah.
just a dumb this.
Yeah, so if 2 groups, I'm sorry, if 20 groups is 4, what would 40 groups, like if we doubled again?
8.
8. 80 groups would be
16.
16. Oh, we're way over, and we're not
Yeah.
even close to 45 yet. Yeah. All right, so does the pattern hold up? I see some head nods. The pattern seems to hold up? Okay. All right, so if y'all want, the 3 separate ones that I gave you, don't put those in the envelopes. But put everything else back in the envelopes if you're good. The other 3, you can just put that paper clip back on them. I'll pick those up separately. I know that 5th graders cannot use calculators on the assessment. But something that I would actually probably do as the next step, I didn't do it with y'all because y'all already know this generalization. 5th grade is figuring out this generalization for the first time if I'm doing something like this. I would actually give them calculators and say double check it. Like plug it in on the calculator, did it really get bigger? Right? Because some of those were really close, like dividing by 0.9. It might be hard to estimate that one because it gets really close because 0.9 is not much smaller than 1. So I would give them calculators because the point isn't getting the division in that last step. The point is developing that generalization. So I'd give them calculators, have them plug it in. Does it really work? And then once they have calculators, I might give them a few more and keep checking, and they feel cool because they're 5th graders using the calculator. And we would figure out this seems to happen. When I divide by something less than 1, my quotient gets bigger. As I'm saying that out loud, I also realize I need to be really careful because negatives are also less than 1. And we're not dealing with negatives yet, and that kind of, I don't want to overgeneralize as well. So I would get to that clarification, and we divide by something between 0 and 1, our quotient actually gets bigger than what our dividend
I think
was.
that other thing, and we talked about this earlier, when I walked up and I saw the number is larger, like the difference between is the number larger or is it a longer, like more digits? So a lot of kids have a misconception if it has more digits, it's bigger. If I'm answering that question about it being larger than the dividend, so.
It doesn't have greater value.
Yeah, and all I might do, right, if I notice a student his wrote like larger and I can tell actually what they meant is there's more digits, I'm just going to tweak like, hey, is this number really, like there's 4 digits, is this really larger than 200 even though 200 only has 3 digits? I'd make that tweak, we'd change the label, and we'd move on. So, all right. So another thing we've talked about, so I want to show you real quick that I think is important, following engaging tasks like that, is I also want to help students experience like what's it going to look like on FAST, right? Let's turn that engaging conversation into success on a FAST type item. So I took a screenshot of this question. It came out of a curriculum. I won't name the curriculum. I think it was Big Ideas. I can't remember. It was one I had access to. Yeah, Big Ideas people. You go, yeah, that's Big Ideas. I just copy and pasted that into my chat, and I've had ChatGPT make me a lot of ETIC type items before. So and it can use all my previous conversations. So I just said, turn this into an ETIC. A couple iterations later, I had this. And so following that sort, like this could be an exit ticket or something. So take a look at this question. Imagine this was one of those ETIC items, so all those bold text, those would just be drop downs, right? So you're choosing, is it greater than, equal to, or less than? Do I plug in 5.4 or 0.9? So as a group, on one sticky note, I want you to talk about this problem and complete this sentence, complete this statement for me. 5.4 divided by 0.9 is blank 5.4 because blank is blank blank. A lot of blanks. So as a group, talk about it, complete that statement, jot it down on a sticky note. All right, so what do we have? What's our statement?
I think it's 5.4 divided by 0.9 is less than 5.4 because 0.9 is less than 1.
I disagree.
Okay. Why?
Because if I multiply both of them by 10, I have 54 divided by 9 is 6. Well, 6 is greater than 5.4.
Well, in that sort, what did we just figure out? Like all the ones that had divisors less than 1, what happened to the dividends? Or what happened to the quotients?
They were greater
than the dividends. Okay.
Dividends.
So what do you think it should be?
I think is greater than 5.4 because
9 is less than 1.
It's greater than because
0.9 is less than 1.
Is less than
5.4 is.
I got you. I see what you're saying now.
All right. So we should have 5.4 divided by 0.9 is greater than 5.4 because 0.9 is less than 1. And this is, just in my opinion, a very fast-like item. It's aligned to that benchmark. There are lots of those ETICs that are filling in blanks. A lot of times that item type is used for some of the reasoning things. This item type is used very frequently to assess that reasoning for students. Around division, especially in 5th grade, we start multiplying and dividing by fractions and decimals. That whole idea that when you multiply and divide by stuff that's less than 1, we get unexpected outcomes, that's a big idea in 5th grade. And so there are a lot of items in the bank around that. And so giving students questions like this, building off of, hey, we just generalized that idea, here's what it looks like to formally answer that. I would want to do something like that with students.
So you put that question into AI?
Yeah, and I just I took a screenshot, and ChatGPT can actually read text in screenshots. So
I have a question about it too.
Yeah.
When you give the kids that part, would you write it out like that and just teach them choose one in this set of parentheses, circle one thing? Like, does anybody do this kind of practicing? Well, it would be a drop down. Because how do you do a drop down? That's what we were just talking about.
The way that I've done it when I have an example in my box I can show you later, or anybody that wants to see it. The way that I've done it in anytime I'm actually doing something with students is, have you seen any of the way the fast samples, when you look at the PDFs, the way that they convert ETICs to paper-based, they just put bubbles with multiple choice. And so that's how I've done it with students. It would be it would have to be spaced out a lot. It wouldn't look really good on a slide. It'd have to be spaced out a lot, and then it would be ABC, greater than, equal to, less than, AB, 5.4, 0.9. I have an example I can dig out and show y'all later if you want to see it. But I just try to make them look like the paper-based versions of the ETICs. All right, so I don't normally do this, but I want to give you a little bit of context first before I have you start on the first stage of this protocol. I want you to notice, kind of look at all 4 of them. I want you to notice they're all the same division problem, and they all have the same answer. They might be right, they might all be wrong, I won't tell you that. But they are the same problem, and there is the, at least, proposal of all having the same correct answer. You're going to have to figure that out, but notice that. All right, so a couple reminders for the placemat protocol. The first 4 stages as we rotate around, it's silent. You're not really collaborating together. You're going to focus on one document at a time. At first, you're not going to be writing. You're just going to be looking at the document, noticing and wondering, and then you'll have time to write in that corresponding quadrant. We'll rotate. We'll do that 4 times so that you get to see all 4 documents, and then you'll get to talk about it. So everyone make sure you have a marker. Everyone make sure you're stationed in front of one of the 4 quadrants. And for 60 seconds, there's no writing. I just want you to look. I know you've already been looking, but that's okay. I just want you to look at the document that's in front of you. Look for patterns, what happened. It's a worked example, so of course you're probably going to be thinking, are they right or wrong? That's okay. Just 1 minute of open noticing and wondering. 30 more seconds, no writing. Remember, everyone's got their own document, so we're not talking yet. The first half of this is silent. All right, for about 1 minute in that corresponding quadrant, wherever you're standing, I want you to jot down what are some of those things that you notice, what are some of those things that you wonder. It can be direct patterns you see, the numbers, you can describe what happened, anything you want. There's no wrong answer here. What do you notice? What do you wonder looking at that document? About 20 more seconds. 5 seconds, wrap up that last thought. 2, 1. All right, cap your markers. Leave the document where it's at, leave the chart alone, but I want you to keep your marker with you and everyone rotate around that chart clockwise. So just move over one section, move over one quadrant, you're going to a new document, a new section, and for 60 seconds there's no writing. For 60 seconds you are just noticing and wondering. You can read what the last person wrote, but you can't write anything yet. All right. 60 seconds to write. You may add your own new thoughts. You can also respond to what the last person wrote. Remember, everybody's got a different document. We're all writing in a different spot. So we're not talking about it yet. Just jot in your quadrant. What did you notice? What did you wonder looking at your document? All right, wrap that up, cap your markers. We're going to rotate same direction, just one quadrant over. Same direction, one quadrant over. 60 seconds on the clock to notice and wonder with the new document. Go ahead and start reading what the other, what your partners have written as well. Go ahead and start reading that and look at the new document. Add on to what your partners have written and add your own noticings and wonderings as well. We got one more rotation, so rotate again. This is our fourth stop, so you're getting to the fourth document, the last one you haven't seen yet. 60 seconds for one final time. 60 seconds to notice and wonder. Remember, look at the document and look at what your partners have already written. All right, there's already a lot on the chart, so this time I'm only going to give you 45 seconds for some final additions to the quadrant. 45 seconds. Any final notes or ways you want to annotate what's there? 5, 2, 1. All right, cap your markers. For the next 2 minutes, only 2 minutes, I want you to just have an open discussion. You've been collaborating a lot just by writing. I want you to talk about it now. So 2 minutes, open discussion. What did you notice? What did you wonder?
Well, I went way back to my old school here when I noticed they multiplied by 10 this one, but not this one.
Yeah.
So I got to thinking it would not be right, but it was. It still ended up okay.
Just broke it down in
But in my mind,
Oh,
because of the way I was taught, when you multiply 1 by 10, you better, because you had to move the decimal, so you added that 0. But it worked out because of the way you did that.
I was thinking about doubling and halving.
Yeah.
Those are friendly numbers if you could double or half something. Yeah.
Because see, I went, the
That's what I was
way
thinking
back
too.
when
Yeah, I was
when
thinking
I was
why-
taught.
Why you did that here and not there?
Yeah.
See how they
That's what I
added
said.
36 and 68.
If the one place was a multiple of 4, they did a 10. But if it
Oh, and get.
Because then that
Oh, they would have been at 70.
petition 28.
Yeah.
I just said they
They were probably just working at, like, okay, double that, okay, double
Yes,
that.
it was taking a
Yeah.
Put 20 and 40 together is 60. They probably
Risk taker. I'm like, this person's risk taker.
that
Out of
after you
all
told
of
them.
them, like, ability to take risks.
Yeah, and like 204, if I know I'm working with 34, Like, interesting.
But this one's more visual.
Yeah, this one would be me. Like, I would want to get as close to that quotient as possible. And, well, not the quotient, but you know, the dividend. But I would want to get as close as possible the first time because of this. I don't want to make more mistakes down here because
And I'm
this
wondering,
requires
did they add this,
regrouping.
or is this just randomly underlined? Because this is not good addition.
That's not right. Exactly. I was like,
They
that's not right.
jumped out of order. The question is, did they add what I was looking at is maybe they added these two. And they thought 20, 40. And
Yeah. Is that what
that's
they're
how I
doing?
saw it.
But then I said if you get 70 here, if they had added all of that, it would have been correct on the first
The
try.
first one, yeah.
Yep.
If they had-
Exactly.
Yeah, they just added all three.
Yep. And then 70. That's funny.
Same strategy, this one just like, I'm thinking for an estimate, this one very closer.
I like this one though because this is your visual person.
And my lower students.
They're like going by tens, but then they're a little unsure, so they only start going by
The issue with this
20s.
one is like you had to regroup here. If you would, this is the biggest mistake for our fifth graders is
this?
regrouping and subtraction, repeated subtraction. That's all of our fifth graders. If they're struggling with division, that's where it is right now. Even if we give them multiplication support, most of our kids will struggle with subtraction right here.
Because they'd have to borrow a 1 from here.
They would put a 3 right here.
Yeah, this
They
is
would 0
definitely
minus 3
closer
and
to
a
the
3. That's the biggest mistake right there. Yeah.
Even though that would be
Interesting.
closer.
Do you see that when your kids get to you? The same kind of mistakes? Or they?
Still like an estimation that goes into like how close can you get without going over.
So there's probably a lot of concepts they don't really know why they work because the calculator just tells you. Yeah.
Because they have such a hard time with that.
So here's how I want you to tailor your discussions and respond in the center. So in the center, I want you to choose one of the examples of the partial quotient strategy to rate and review. And if you don't remember, rate and review, that's one of the like small protocols we did a few sessions ago. So you're going to give it from 1 to 5 stars, right? Is it a 1-star strategy? Is it a 5-star strategy? Is it somewhere in between? But you have to write a review, that should say to justify your number of stars. So you're going to give it a number of stars and then also write out, like justify. Why did you give it 3 stars? Why did you give it 4 stars? Why did you give it 1? So choose one. You can use the colors. You can say like the blue one, 4 stars. However you want to do that.
There's a better number sense.
But I think even your lower kids, once they started seeing the others and the importance of the writing it down, that's my struggle.
But
I
they could
can't
look
get them to write it down.
Because they could look at that one, and look at all the tens, and see they could
Make sense of that.
Yeah, well, that's, you know,
3 tens
20,
with the
40,
20 would
50,
be-
there's that,
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
2 tens, you could do
And start
that.
making the
That's how I
connection.
figured it, because I didn't know what this was when I first looked. I was like, what is this? Why? But then when I went over there, I was like,
Because you only want long division
yeah.
Yeah,
instead of partial quotient.
yeah.
That's the thing. I would say one of these just because it shows the number sense that goes. There's a solid understanding. Yeah. So yeah. 5 stars.
But is it, because it's the whole thing together, right?
It's all of these
Yeah.
steps
What we would
condensed
give.
into these 2.
Okay.
I have more kids over maybe there to there. I got a few kids here though. We gotta rate one, so you can rate that one.
Sure. Yeah. How many stars?
3.
How many?
Like it's not a bad. You're
They
doing
persevered. They're doing the algorithm.
right.
They persevered just a little longer than.
It just took a little too long, but that's
And
okay.
there's more, in all honesty, there's more.
I got a
room
question
for
real
error.
quick. Do we know that strategy, just by looking at the work, do we know that one was more or less efficient than, say, the blue one?
There's more room for error. There's, yeah, that's the only
There's
thing.
more room for error, okay.
But no, you got the same answer.
We got the same answer. Do we know, like if those were 2 different students, do we know which student took longer?
That's when I would
We
think.
could guess.
I mean, based on,
Okay.
Yeah, we've already do this.
Right.
We've already
Can
judged
probably
them.
do it.
Okay. So if that was done quickly, right? Okay.
Yeah, we've already judged them. That we already gave them levels.
They were the highest.
Yeah. That's okay.
all right.
This is our intervention kid. Yeah.
Okay.
But-
That
but
student's doing
persevere.
grade level
Yeah,
work. I'm
yeah,
not giving that
perseveres.
student interventions. They're
Well-
doing grade level work.
Yeah, but this kid might be on number 10 when we're still working on number 1. So we
Yeah.
got to work on our perseverance.
They're only going to have to do 1 or 2 of them on PM3. So, they're only going to get 1 or 2 division questions.
But they have 35 questions.
That's fair. That is fair.
Right.
Okay.
And
if it takes some,
they're still trying to remember what fabric meant in the question that you asked them. Or since when does bread come in by pound?
So we're gonna
Tied for first place.
4-star.
Yeah. And I always like to think about, too, like, looking at sample work. We don't really know how long it took students in between steps. Like you were talking about, like the half of 340 is 170. Maybe that student thought about that for a couple of minutes before they wrote it down. Like maybe it took them a minute to work that out.
That's why I said, we said this was the one that I would like because I see this one as they added 68 and 136 to get to 204.
Yeah.
We
just
like
doubled,
we
we doubled.
Saying, right, but you were saying if they had just gone ahead and added all the way down, then it would have been 70 and they would have had the answer immediately. I do like the doubles and half strategy, but here I like that they got closer and they didn't have to regroup. So I think like
avoid regrouping at all costs.
That's what we were doing. That's why I said, what's that?
Yeah, I'm with that. Avoid regrouping at all costs. All right, so I just to share out, because I think it'll be cool to hear different ones. Which color did y'all review? Green. So they left a review for the green. Which color did y'all review? Green and blue. Okay. Which one did y'all review?
Technically red and blue.
Red and blue. So we had only 3 groups, and we had at least 3 different things. So, all right, that's cool. That's cool. All right. I didn't say this before, so I want to say this now. The other 2 tasks I kind of set up, like when I think they might happen. We just jumped right into this one. I probably wouldn't do this right after the sort that we did. Like we would need to do some more work in between. I won't say it that way. I wouldn't be scared for this to be the first thing students are doing when we're about to be actually dividing with decimals, when we're going to figure out the quotients. And I say that because I made some very intentional decisions around the numbers. Yes, it's a decimal, but we had no remainder. The numbers were relatively friendly, and so the partials kind of worked out. Like once we started working with the partials, we didn't have to worry about the decimals. So I wouldn't be scared for this to be like day 1 activity of when we're about to actually start working on dividing with decimals. I will say for the 5th grade teachers in the room, this is one of the few places where, I don't want to say I would advocate, but I certainly understand a feeling that you need an algorithm moving forward from this. I say that with a little hesitation because when they go to 6th grade, they get a calculator, and algorithms are outdated because the calculator is a better algorithm than they are. However, once we start dividing with some pretty complex decimals, in 5th grade, we're not representing remainders like we do in 4th grade. We're not writing R7. We're not just putting like 7/4. And if we are going to write it as a fraction, but my remainder is a decimal, we don't deal with complex fractions in elementary school either. And so there is a need for something more algorithmic, something a little more procedural than just partial quotients with this model, dealing with those remainders with decimals. So that would eventually come up. And I just say that so that 5th grade teachers don't think I'm saying don't use the standard algorithm or don't use a standard algorithm for division. When we're getting into the more complex decimals at the very end, I think there's certainly a case that it's pretty necessary, very temporarily necessary. If we build enough understanding prior to that, it's going to happen relatively easily, and then when they move to 6th grade, it won't matter because they get a calculator. But I do see a space for that. We just didn't do anything with that space today.